Welcome to the lecture on individual level control theories. Let's get started. Emily Durkheim once said that, quote, "The more weakened the groups to which the individual belongs, the less he depends on them. The more he consequently depends only on himself and recognizes no other rules of conduct than what are founded on his private interests," unquote. Control theories assume that delinquent acts result from when an individual's bond to society is either weak or broken. Since these theories embrace two highly complex concepts, that being the bond of the individual to society, so bond and society being a highly complex concepts, it is not surprising that these theories at one time or another have formed the basis of explanations of most forms of odd or unusual behavior. It is also not surprising that control theories have described the elements of the bond to society in many ways, and that they have focused on a variety of units as the point of control, or a variety of different elements of society as the point through which control of society and control of individuals is managed. Most theories start off with the idea that it is normal for people to follow the law and only rare individuals want to break the law. However, control theories take the opposite approach. They assume that if it wasn't for laws and other norms in society, people would do terrible things due to the power, excitement, or benefits that they would achieve from doing these terrible things. This idea is rooted in Durkheim and his thoughts on the bond individuals form with and to society. Durkheim's bond has four different elements: attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. And all four of these elements of the bond are important in social control theory. Typically, in explaining attachment, sociologists have emphasized sensitivity to the opinion of others. However, sociologists have tended to suggest that individuals who are sensitive to the opinion of others thus exclude sensitivity from their explanations of deviant behavior. In explaining deviant behavior, psychologists, in contrast, have emphasized insensitivity to the opinion of others. So sociologists have emphasized sensitivity to others, the opinion of others, but have excluded it from their explanations of deviant behavior. But psychologists have emphasized insensitivity to the opinion of others. Psychologists have also tended to ignore variation and, in addition, tie sensitivity to other variables. So psychologists have made it part of a syndrome or a quote-unquote type, and thus have seriously reduced its value as an explanatory concept. Consequently, psychologists explain psychopaths as characterized only in part by quote-unquote deficient detachment or affection for others. They also talk about psychopaths by such things as, quote, aggressiveness or excessive aggressiveness, lack of respect for others, and lack of superego control. These are all things that are used to define psychopathy. In the words of one psychologist, quote, "The psychopath is, without shame or qualification, a model circular process or a model tautological process by which mental abnormality is inferred from antisocial behavior, where antisocial behavior is explained by mental abnormality." Unquote. The problem of diagnosis, tautology, and name-calling can be avoided if the dimensions of psychopathy are treated as causally and therefore problematically interrelated, rather than logical and therefore necessarily related to each other. Attachment, therefore, or lack thereof, is not merely a symptom of psychopathy. Really, it is being psychopathic. Lack of conscience is just another way of saying the same thing. And violation of norms then may be a consequence. The lack of internalization of norms or having a conscience thus can lie in the attachment of the individual to others or lack thereof. Changes or variation in behavior can thus be explained in a way that it is not when notions of internalization of the superego are used, but rather when a number of deviant acts have been committed. For example, one is more likely after a divorce to commit deviant acts such as suicide because one's internal control has already been lost through divorce, and thus one is more likely to commit crime. Consequently, if one remarries, one has to conclude that such things like suicide are more likely to not happen because one is less likely to commit other non-deviant acts by getting married again. The next of the four important elements is commitment. One can think about being committed to conformity. In being committed to conformity, the individual is in a position in which their decision to regard a particular line of action has consequences for their other interests and activities. They've placed themselves in a position in line with their own prior actions, and they think of this as somewhat apparent. The committed person has to be aware of their interests, and they must recognize their decision, or all of their decisions, has ramifications beyond their initial decision. So ramifications have consequences down the road. This falls in line with the fact that the individual's position that they are currently in is due to their prior actions. Involvement is the next element that we'll discuss. So many people think of social control and the element of involvement in social control theory as, in short, owing a life of virtue to the lack of opportunity to do otherwise. Time and energy are limited, and can only be spent in so many different ways. So involvement becomes part of conventional activities and control theory because the assumption is that a person may simply be too busy doing conventional things to find time to behave like a deviant. In short, a person is too busy working, waiting in line, and making other plans in order to act in a deviant manner. This is actually where many after-school programs and activities began. Adults felt that if children were so busy playing sports, doing art, interacting with their peers in positive ways, that they would be unlikely to pursue deviant behaviors. The children would be unlikely to pursue deviant behaviors, and also unlikely to drop out of school. You can think of it in terms of what conventional activities have you been likely to engage in? But a criticism of this theory would be, or this element of the theory would be to think about if you engage in any deviant behaviors alongside the conventional activities that you've engaged in. Control theories have typically addressed belief violations or norm violations of the culture in one of two ways. First, individuals or groups can take the approach that beliefs are mere words and that breaking them does not imply a large amount of deviance or a significant, irreparable deviance from the culture. Essentially, beliefs are just words, and that breaking them means very little. The other approach is one where deviants rationalize their behavior so they can violate the rule. However, they can simultaneously maintain their belief in the rule or the culture. One thing to consider is how, when you have violated your own beliefs or acted outside of a way that you would consider within your belief system, or your culture's belief system, has your reason aligned more with the thought that beliefs are just words, or has your reason aligned more with the idea that you can simultaneously violate a rule yet maintain belief in a rule that you have violated? Durkheim emphasized morality, and this has remained a large part of social control theory. Durkheim thought that morality possibly came from three different sources: the family, particularly the mother and father, the nation, and humanity itself. This led to important questions regarding where delinquency came from and how it should be controlled. Did delinquency and the control of delinquency stem from one's parents, one's family, one's school, one's nation? It was unclear. However, Durkheim thought that the most important source of morality was, in fact, the nation. Delinquency theory, which is separate from social control theory, has taken to stand on many questions regarding the importance of institutions. It has highlighted the importance of the school, in fact. However, social control theory has remained decidedly eclectic, partly because many of the elements of different bonds direct attention to different institutions. In short, there are so many different institutions and different bonds. It has become problematic to control theories to discuss which of these elements are most important at any one time. So with this comes a couple different possibilities. One is to agree with the assumption and think that all youth want to be deviant, but only the youth who live in societies, or societies and families without effective controls will actually be deviant. The other option is to disagree with the assumption and argue that some youth do not want to be deviant, whereas others will do want to be deviant. When we think about social control theories, the question we want to ask ourselves and that we want to center our conversation around is not why did a certain group do it, but why don't we all do it? So from that, we want to consider what prohibits some individuals from engaging in and joining in the activity, or in the deviance that is occurring. Why is not everyone involved in this group act? With that, we are done for the week. So remember to submit your analysis by next Monday at 5 p.m. Thanks so much.